Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Challenging Minds, Changing Hearts, The Power of Middle Grade Coming of Age Tales. I'm Sarah Hunter, Booklist's Books for Youth and Graphic Novels editor. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and will pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. And if you are hearing an echo, please click to see if you have two Zoom windows open. Closing one of these windows will remove that echo. We apologize for this technical glitch. Zoom is working on a solution to fix it for future events. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable them on your screen, please look for and click the Show Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of them at any time by selecting Caption Settings. Thanks to our partners at Random House Children's Books, we are thrilled to offer live ASL interpretation for this event. Many thanks to our interpretation team for joining us today. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. We have a wonderful event today and will be in conversation with our authors in a few minutes, but first we will begin today's webinar with introductions from our panelists about their new books. Unfortunately, Nic Stone isn't able to join us today, but you can read a sample of DASIA Forever on the Random House Children's Books website, where it is also available for pre-order. We will kick things off today with Andrea Beatriz Arango. Andrea is the author of Newbery Honor Book Ivelisse Explains It All, the Pure Belpre Honor Book Something Like Home, and its All or Nothing Ballet. She was born and raised in Puerto Rico, where she first became a teacher. She then spent a decade in the United States working in public schools and nonprofits. When she's not busy writing about middle schoolers and their families, you can find her hoping to spot manatees at the beach. Andrea lives in Puerto Rico with her family. Thank you for being here, Andrea. Tell us about No Place on Earth.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and to get to talk about No Place on Earth, which will be out in just a little bit over a month. I can't believe how fast time has flown. If you don't know anything about No Place on Earth, it's pretty exciting because it's my first book with a male main character. I cannot tell you how many school visits I've done where the boys have asked me, when will you write a book with a boy? So here it is, my boy book. The book is about Gustavo, who is a sixth grader whose parents are on a break. And during this break, his mom applies and gets a job at Yellowstone National Park. And so Gustavo, who has lived in Puerto Rico his whole life, just like me, has to then move to Montana/Wyoming right before the year's first big snow. And so it would already be a huge adjustment just in moving to the States and moving somewhere very rural and where the culture is very different and there's way too much wildlife. But on top of it all, his nightmares, which he has had since he is very little, get a lot worse when he gets to Yellowstone. And then to top it all off, he starts seeing one of his classmates in his dreams. And so this is a lot for him to handle. But then when something happens to his new friend, and Gustavo's the only one who can help because of his whole dream situation, it really begs the question, like, how do you step up and help your friends and save the day when you already have way too much going on in your own life to even try to focus on anybody else? The book is my first one written mostly in prose. If you've read my other books, you know they're all in verse. This one is about 2/3 in prose, 1/3 in verse. It's my first book with two points of views. So Gustavo's sections are in prose and his friend Cordell's are in verse. So I'm really excited. It was definitely the most challenging book I've written so far, but I'm really proud of it and I really love it a lot. And I hope that you all are able to get the book to the kids who would most benefit from reading it.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Next up is Chrystal D. Giles. Chrystal is a champion for diversity in children's literature. She is also the author of Take Back the Block and Not an Easy Win, which have received multiple starred reviews and made multiple year-end and state award lists. Chrystal lives outside Charlotte, North Carolina with her husband and son and is currently working on her next middle grade novel. Thank you for joining us today, Chrystal. please tell us about Listen to the Girls.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here to talk about Listen to the Girls. It released in May, so we are still in the new days of it being out in the world. It follows Calla on her last day of seventh grade. She is excited to have her first summer with no summer camp. Her parents are the summer enrichment type, and this is the first year where she was able to convince them to let her have some chill days at the pools with her friends. All of those chill vibes come to a halt when rumors start to spread about her favorite teacher. The rumors are about him possibly harassing students at his old school, and Calla is upended. Her emotions are high. She is confused. She doesn't understand how her favorite teacher could be one way with her and one way with other people. And the community is in a bit of an uproar. So the story follows her on this journey to one, understand what's being said. She is also in the process of finding out what it means to listen and support other people. And as she goes through that journey, she also um, she also comes with the revelation that maybe she has a story to tell on her own. The story is for sure emotional in moments. It is also counterbalanced with a lot of humor and banter with her friends. And in contrast to Andrea, this is my first girl main character. So it was very hard to get into the mind of Calla. She taught me so much about slowing down and listening and taking my time throughout the writing process. So I hope it's a book that you will enjoy and one that you will share with your students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chrystal. And finally, we'll welcome Kate O'Shaughnessy to our virtual stage. Kate is a 2025 Newbery Honor winner for The Wrong Way Home. She's also the author of The Lonely Heart of Maybelle Lane and Lasagna Means I Love You, both of which received numerous starred reviews. A book nerd, animal lover, former chef, and outdoor enthusiast, Kate lives in California with her family. So glad you could join us today, Kate. Tell us about Brittle Magic.
Hi, I'm so thrilled to be here today. So thank you so much for having me. Brittle Magic, which I have a copy of my arc right here, will come out in October of this year. And it follows the story of 12-year-old Shiloh Brittle Magic, who lives with her Brittle Magic, oh my gosh, Shiloh Brittle Walker, who lives in the Berkshires, Massachusetts, with her very extraordinary family. And her family is extraordinary because to be born a brittle means that you are born with a talent, a gift. So for her sister, she can grow just enormous vegetables the size of a house or a car. Her great aunt brews tea that gives you good dreams, and her aunt can make pickles that tell your fortune. And the way that you find out what your gift is going to be is the night before your birth, your mother has a dream about what your talent's going to be. And the night before Shiloh's birth, her mom had a dream about her twin brother who can heal plants and make them grow no matter what, but did not have a dream about Shiloh. This is in contrast with Shiloh's absolutely unshakable belief that there is a thread of brittle magic within her. And when she finally gets a session with her Aunt Delilah's fortune-telling pickles, they reveal that yes, in fact, she does have a gift. Not only does she have a gift, it's a very big one, and it is connected to a big family secret and is also connected to the reason why her older brother, Jason, who she never met and passed away before she was born, it's connected to his death and the reason for his death. So Shiloh is really confused. She doesn't understand why this is a secret, why her mom, potentially even her dad, has kept this information from her, and is absolutely just really wants to figure out what her gift might be, especially before the big Brittle family reunion that is happening in a couple months' time. So like Andrea and Chrystal, this book, I love that we all have sort of firsts with these books. This is my first book with a thread of magic. And anyone who knows me well knows that I was a huge fantasy reader as a kid. And it's something that I've always wanted to work into my books, which have until now been only contemporary. And so I would say this is definitely for fans of folks that like, Encanto or Savvy, books that deal with magic as sort of this hereditary thing. So very thrilled to share it with you in October.
Thank you so much, Kate. And now I'll invite all of our panelists to turn on your cameras for the panel portion of our webinar today. Hello, nice to see your faces. So each of your main characters are truth-seeking in one way or another, either by an actual investigation or by personal reflection. We're here today to talk about coming-of-age stories, but can you each talk about how, for middle grade readers in particular, coming of age is a process of seeking the truth? Let's see. Andrea, you smiled first, so how about we start with you?
If that's the case, I'm going to be first for everything. A chronic smiler. Yeah, no, I love this question. I was a middle school teacher for a really long time, and I can tell you that a lot of the struggles that my students faced, and some of the biggest reasons that they got into trouble, especially, and got detention and that kind of stuff, was because they did not feel understood and they felt like their inner truth wasn't being seen or respected by other people. I think it's really hard when an adult comes to you and tells you X is the reason for your actions, and you know that that isn't true, but nobody else is seeing that. And I think we do that a lot as adults, and we may not realize the rift that it can cause between young people that we're saying that to and ourselves. And I think the magic of books, like all of ours, is that for those young people who might not feel seen in their everyday life, who might not have people around them who can see their truths, we're allowing them to feel seen, in the pages of a book. And that's still access to truth and truths that other people might not understand. And maybe you didn't understand until you read the book and saw it in yourself. But I think that truth seeking and that truth understanding and that truth living, once you have that understanding, can be so powerful. And I do think that because of that, books like ours have the ability to change lives because they might help you access a truth that you haven't found otherwise.
Chrystal, you were nodding so much during interview.
Everything she said absolutely just resonated with me. Particularly the bit about truth being power, literally on a quote in my book. And I promise I was not going to do this, but Andrea, it's your fault. There is a quote in my book that says, "What if the truth really is as powerful as it feels?" And so really the whole point of this book is to discover truth. I like to think of my work as truth wrapped in story. It helps me stay grounded in why I am writing a book. As an adult writing for children, oftentimes you want to capture all of these things, all of these years of knowledge that you've gained, and sometimes it kind of takes you out of the center of the story. And so I like to use one central truth to drive me straight to the point of the book. And so I think, to Andrea's point, young people are in discovery mode. They want to know what is real. They are told things, they experience things, and sometimes they are hearing untrue things. And so I think middle grade literature is a great model for what it means to live in your truth, to discover, to mess up, and then get back on track. And so I think that's the beauty in books that talk about truth and send readers on a truth journey. And so that's for sure what this book does. And Calla ends up on a discovery for truth in this book, and that really is the driver for the whole plot.
Great. Kate, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with so much of that idea of children as truth seekers, and how at this age, you're really starting to realize that perhaps not everything you're told is the truth. And that is a really eye-opening and scary experience that I remember. One of the reasons I write for this age is because you're standing on this precipice of all of these questions and this understanding that the world is really varied and not so black and white, right? Like there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot more gray area that you have to kind of figure out yourself than you may have thought when you were a younger kid. And that is something that I think threads through all of my books. And, my last book was very much about that. Like, oh, maybe some things I'm being told aren't true on a more general level about the world and all these things. And for Brittle Magic, I really wanted to close the lens a little bit and have it be questions about like, who am I? Who is my like, who are we as a family? And why are there some things that just are so hard to talk about? And so this book, the truth seeking went both inward, and the lens was trained on Shiloh's family. And for me at that age, I remember thinking, who am I? I remember I had this bright green, lime green diary that I would write in. And there, it was just very, very dramatic was one of the things. But also, I remember one entry particularly kind of bemoaning the fact that I wasn't sure who I was, and look back, I want to give young me a hug, because I'm like, well, that's what you're doing. Like that age, the age that you are, 11, 12, that is one of the main focuses, is figuring out who you are, how you fit into the world, who your family is, and what it all means from a bigger perspective. So I think life in general is one truth-seeking mission. I still every day will discover new things about myself and the people that I love that sometimes can leave me feeling almost speechless with this idea of like, how did I not realize that? And I think it really starts at this age. I think it starts 10, 11, 12 in a way that I'm just fascinated by and really love to write towards.
Great. Thank you. That's a nice segue to my next question, which is that all of your main characters are dealing with some big emotions, sometimes around adults who don't always have the best coping or communication skills. How did you each approach conveying generational differences in talking about or handling feelings? Kate, I thought a lot about your book when I was thinking of this question. Do you want to kick us off here?
Sure. I'd be happy to kick it off. One thing that I really love about the younger generations is there's this general openness to talking about things. Therapy is something that is widespread and really accepted in a way that generationally I don't see it as much in terms of acceptance with, the baby boomer generation, Gen X, and even to a certain extent, I think millennials are right on that cusp of like, I think a lot of people are very open about it, but might be affected by their parents or their grandparents' perspective on things. And this was definitely something in terms of this generational difference that you will see in my book. There is a secret there is a wound, a family wound, which is the loss of Jason, who is the oldest of the Brittle Walker children. And there are secrets around it and all of these things. And it's just a nut of pain that is avoided in her family. This is driven very much by her mom, and her dad sort of is happy to go along with it, understanding that it's perhaps just something too painful to touch. And I think there's definitely that generational difference that you'll see there. I think her mom probably was affected by the generational perspective of, oh, we just don't talk about things that are hard. And you see the difference in Shiloh, who at 12 is very much like, but why? Like, why don't we talk about these things? We have to talk about these things. And sort of the family unit coming together over the course of the book as these secrets and as this pain starts to come out, you see this sense of healing. And I would say it's not only generational, it's also personality based, right? This idea of being able to confront pain and realizing that sometimes really, really opening up to it and having it be a part of your life is the way that you're going to heal around it, instead of just avoiding it. So I think generationally, it's absolutely affected in the way that it's dealt with in my book, and in terms of openness and talking about emotions, along with just personality of the characters.
Mm-hmm. Andrea, you touched on that a little bit in your book as well. Do you think you can take the next?
Yeah, no, I think generational differences, like Kate said, I think we're moving in the right direction of, opening up those channels of communication. But I do think there is still very much a gap between generations. And especially when you get into like specific cultures. I know, in Puerto Rico, we are definitely not there yet. It is still very much kind of like an anti-therapy culture, and especially when it comes to boys and men. It is a very patriarchal, Catholic place, those two things specifically. And they really affect, those conversations around mental health. Because, why would you go to therapy when you can just man up and pray about it? You'll be good to go. And so I think kiddos right now, especially in Puerto Rico, right, in my culture where I live, the ones who are growing up with that kind of mental health vocabulary and that vocabulary around emotions are the ones who have guardians at home who go to therapy and who openly talk about it. But if you don't have adults in your life who are kind of doing the work, it can feel really hard not just to talk about things, but to specifically name emotions. I think we don't always understand how hard that can be. Like, if you ask a young person to tell you what they're feeling, they can definitely tell you if they're sad or happy or angry. But if you ask them to name something more specific and to tell you like what's behind the happiness and the sadness and the anger umbrellas, they can't. And so in No Place on Earth, Gustavo, my main character, he can't even bring himself to name his anxiety, to label the things that he is feeling, because nobody in his family names it. They just make jokes about it. And so when he gets to Yellowstone and he meets his classmate Cordell, who also has these big emotions, but then talks about it in a very frank sort of way. And it's just like, yeah, I have depression. It sucks. It's like so different from anything that Gustavo has ever experienced before. And so I really tried to show in this book, just how much power naming something can give you, and how much more control it can give you, and how to kind of open up and have those conversations when the people around you, because of generational differences or cultural differences or whatever, haven't been open to that before.
How about you, Chrystal?
Yeah, I'm listening to both of them talk about what it means to have parents in this generation trying to do it the right way. I have a son that's almost 11, and I am sometimes completely taken aback when he said something that is deeply emotional. Or he has the language and I go, oh my goodness. So one, I think I've done something right, me and my husband, but then also then I have to react to it in a way that's also evolved. And so he does that often, and I think he's an indicator of what Andrea described. Like, if you have parents, if you have people in your life that are giving you language, that are giving the space to discuss things emotionally, then you learn how to do it. And so that's one of the things I try to model in my work as well, right? I write often about community and the way it shows up. And so sometimes there is community that does not share and that have these things tucked away. And listen to the girls. Kala is on a deep emotional journey. There are parts that are very emotional. There are parts where she's kind of tucking things into herself. And then there are parts where her friends are openly sharing. And I think all of that modeling shows that there's phases and that there's some things we tuck away because we're embarrassed or we aren't sure what to say and we don't have the language to talk about it. And so in my work, I really try to model all of the nuances, which can sometimes be tough in literature to show all of that. But I back myself into a corner in some ways to try to show the nuances of everything you can possibly feel and then how to work yourself through it. And so Kala absolutely has some deeply emotional moments. We watch her try to internalize it. We watch her try to express it. We watch the way it makes her body feel. And then eventually she gets to a place where she's comfortable enough to express. And so for me, it's all about that modeling in the most nuanced way possible.
Great. My next question is specifically about your book, Chrystal. Um, Kala is navigating a significant challenge, largely on her own. What inspired you to write about girls who feel like they have to take responsibility for solving such big problems?
Yeah, so when I think about what she's doing on her own, I have two big thoughts. Number one, um, girls are often just not listened to. And I think this book really captures that, right? It captures that in the title. But in this particular case, the girls in this story have accused their former teacher of sexual harassment and just inappropriate activity. And they have been shunned, they've been ignored. And then there is this independent journalist who decides to write a story about what has happened. So that's the first crack in that secret that has not been talked about. Um, when Kala encounters that, she's confused. She doesn't know what to do. And I don't think she decides to take on this thing. I think it happens to her and then she has to figure out a way to deal with it. I think often when we don't know what to do, we turn inward. And so throughout the story, she's having these heavy emotions and she's inside herself with those emotions. She makes some decisions on her own and then she eventually shares. What I will say, and one of the biggest reasons I decided to write this book is because I gave her support as well. So while she's doing this internal battle, she has a ton of support. I would not have been able to write the book if I did not bolster her with support. So she also has an incredible family. She has a friend group, and then she has a brother who ended up being kind of one of my favorite characters to write. And he is supportive, he listens, he's a little irritating, but she does eventually have enough support. And ultimately, I think it's one of the most empowering components of the story that she does have a support system that lifts her.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the brother is really great. I love how he's like he I think he can he tell that she is going through something because he's always like, "Are you sure you're okay? Do you want to talk about this?"
I
And
think
she's like, "Oh, leave me alone. You're so
I
annoying."
right. So I think he senses it. I think he's unsure, and I think he's trying to protect her feelings by not pushing too hard. And so I think he's doing this back and forth thing. I think he has an internal inclination. But I love that he waits for her. And then I love that he instantly has her back as soon as she's ready.
One other thing that really struck me about your book, and I don't remember whether this was in your author's note or in Tala's own narrative, but you talk about how she's like very smart and capable, and people just sort of assume that she has it together. And I think that's something that maybe for girls it gets taken for granted that girls are very capable, and they may be very smart in class, but they still need help. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about your choices there with that part of the book.
Yes. I'm so happy you brought this up. I think sometimes that smart girl energy that we classify and that Calla says herself, I think it is sometimes weaponized. I think sometimes the girls are adultified because they can just figure it out. I was one of those girls. I love school. I was straight A's, but I still had a lot of things I was dealing with and I needed support and I didn't often get that. And so that's one of those things that I put in the book to watch Kala deal with. We still have to support our smart girls. We still have to support the quiet girls and the loud girls and the girls who don't know. We still have to support them. And actually, Kala having this perfect image in a way, I think actually made her more vulnerable because no one checked in. No one said, "Hey, how are you doing?" Or they just had an expectation that she would figure it out. And so there are lots of accounts of abuse that happen with girls who appear vulnerable on the outside, who may not have the family structure. But I would warn against ignoring the girls who also look like they have it together because they also need support.
Thank you. Andrea and Kate, my next question is for you. Both of your books deal in magic in one way or another, varying degrees. Um, and it's sort of a catalyst for healing and connection in both of your books. What makes magic so palatable for middle grade readers and such a good fit for coming of age stories? Andrea, do you want to go first?
Sure. I feel like I'm still figuring out my answers to any question that has to do with magic because, like Kate, this is my first book that's not like straight up 100% like realism. Although I still think it leans more in that direction. But there are a lot of dreams in my book and sort of dream magic and a dream Yellowstone. And for me, I think dreams are just so innately connected to mental health and to everything that you have going on inside you. And so I have always had chronic nightmares, like Gustavo in my book. And when I was little, my family always said, "Oh, it's because you have such a creative brain. Like you're always writing so many stories. Of course, you have crazy dreams." And it turns out it wasn't that at all. It was that I had an anxiety disorder and it was coming out at night in my dreams. But again, we weren't having those conversations, right? And so I had been wanting to write a book about dreams and nightmares for a really long time because growing up, I felt very alone in the way that I would just sleep terribly every single night and then wake up and go to school very tired. And sometimes, even if I didn't remember my dreams, that like bad feeling would like continue into my day, would like seep into everything I was doing. And I didn't know anybody else who was going through something like that. And I felt very dismissed by people when I said like, "Oh, I had a bad dream," because everyone's like, "Yeah, I've had a bad dream too." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand though. Like mine are like every night. It's not the dream, it's the consistency of the dreams." And so I'd really wanted to tackle that in a book. And I think magic and sort of the ethereal is such a cool way to make it not feel as heavy. I didn't want to write a book where it's just like this kid is having a hard time during the day and then he's having a terrible time at night, because that would just be a really hard, heavy book. And so a way for me to soften it and to bring a little bit more light and hope and healing into it was to have these dreams be happening in a sort of dream Yellowstone that only he and his friend Cordell can access, and where everything is kind of like in the daylight, but they also have these powers. His friend can lucid dream, which I wish I could do, but his friend in the book can. And so he's teaching Gustavo to lucid dream and to be able to control all these things and have this sort of power over his own like wants and feelings and emotions that he normally doesn't have during the day. And so I think that's the cool thing about not just magic, but books with magic that are set in a very like contemporary, realistic sort of world, is that it makes you feel like the bad things are going to be better and it can turn around because you don't know what's going to happen in your dreams tonight. Like you might discover a brand new world. Everything might change. There are no rules, right? Or there are, but you don't know what the rules are. And that makes so many more things feel possible. Instead of just being kind of stuck in this daily life where everything is the same. So that's why I decided to attempt it. I don't know how successful I was. This is my first time trying something like this, but I definitely tried to make the dreams kind of help Gustavo feel in control over his emotions and kind of be able to feel power that he doesn't normally feel during the day. And then that help him, he can carry that with him into his regular life. And so that's the power of magic in my book.
Great, thanks. Kate, tell us about magic in your book.
Sure. So as I said, I have always wanted to write with magic. Like this has been something that has always been on my bucket list. When I first started writing, way before I was published, it was all sort of fantasy stories. And then I found sort of a foothold in contemporary and fell in love with that. So now it feels like the merging of these interests of telling these sort of grounded, emotional, contemporary stories with also this long-standing love of magic and stories. And the way that I approached it, specifically for Brittle Magic, was the idea that magic is kind of like glitter. It can call attention to something in a very beautiful way and highlight it. It's really fun, but it can also get messy, right? So this is exactly the way that magic functions in my book. I wanted to use it to highlight certain themes and personality traits of the different characters. So for instance, Shiloh has a lot of gumption and moxie. She's very stubborn and hard-headed. She doesn't always say sorry. Like all of these things that are a part of who she is. And her twin brother, on the contrary, similar to Chrystal's older brother for Calla, is a much more gentle, person. And so I do like that there's that portrayal of young men and boys in these stories, that sort of that gentleness. And Sammy is a carer, and the magic that he has, this gift, the brittle gift that he has, is the plants will sort of come alive at his touch. He can heal. He'll go around his school and help all the plants that the janitors sort of ignore, right? So it just felt like it was a really natural way of highlighting that is who he was. And I really just wanted to use it in that way of shining this spotlight, right? And really making these characteristics and these ideas jump out to the forefront in a way that would be what I hope is really fun for a young reader to engage with.
Cool. Yeah. The other thing that occurred to me for both of your books is that that moment of self-discovery, as in Brittle Magic, that Shiloh lands on, and that connection with another person who can help you give language to what you're experiencing in your book, Andrea, that sort of experience when you're young kind of feels like magic sometimes, because it's like all the pieces are falling into place in a way that makes a lot of sense. And I think that experience is something that is a part of both of your books as well.
Well, thank you. I feel the same way. I really feel the same way. That sort of things feel magical when you're little, and the way that it can kind of just, for better or for worse, like Andrea was saying, these nightmares and they feel big and overpowering, right? So much of that experience as a kid is things really do feel like they have threads of magic in them. So it can align nicely with that contemporary experience.
Yeah, and also just figuring out what different friendships with different people or different relationships can look like. So, Gustavo has this friend group back home that he does very boy-like things with. They play video games, but they never talk about they don't even know that he has nightmares because they literally never talk about stuff like that. So then for him to strike up a friendship with another boy who does want to talk about emotions and these kinds of things is so new to him. And I think that's important to show young people too, is you can have different people in your lives who contribute to your life in different ways, and you don't need one person to give you everything. You can have all these different relationships that are all beneficial for your truth seeking and your discovery and you're coming into your own, and you can lean on a community and not just, the one or two relationships.
Thank you. This is another question for all of you together. Why do you think your stories are important for readers, and what messages do you hope they'll take away from them? Chrystal, can we start with you?
Sure. So first, let me say yay for these expressive, soft boys. I think we all have someone in our books that do. So I absolutely love it. Andrea, you just said something about friendships and community that just absolutely touched my heart. So thank you. So what do I hope people take away? Listen to the Girls is a book that I hope will be a part of a larger conversation on grooming, sexual harassment, boundaries, consent, all of that. There are some beautiful books that have been published recently in the past 5 years or so that touch on it in different ways. This book specifically talks about when there is an adult doing some things that are inappropriate. I focused on the teacher element just because in my own homeschool district, there have been many, many, many cases where that has been reported, some of them national level cases. And so I wanted to bring that reality into a story. But I also know that that happens in all adult relationships, whether it's coach, whether it's clergy, whether it's family member, neighbor, and also when the person happens to be a peer. I write in my author's note about a situation when I was a seventh grader, just like Calla, and I was pretty vigorously sexually harassed by a peer. And I did not have the language. I don't think I had the bravery really to talk about it and share it. And I hope this book inspires young people to look for a safe place or be a safe place for someone else. And on a practical level, I hope they walk away with language. So if something is uncomfortable, you have the language to say, that makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it. And I hope they feel empowered enough to do that. The story, as I've said, it's emotional in places, but it's also, I think, empowering and uplifting to be able to use your voice to help others and to help yourself. And so I hope all of those messages are conveyed to the reader in a way that's not heavy or overpowering, but just in a way that's also supportive.
Thank you. The notion of finding language to describe things makes me think of your book, Andrea. Can you answer that question then?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I want readers to think about is, friendship is at the center of this book, but specifically how to show up for your friends when things aren't that great in your life either. I think it can be really easy to be a good friend when you don't have anything kind of taking up all of your brain space. But when you are going through something, it takes a lot more effort to then also show up for your friends who are going through their own things. And that is across ages because I think adults struggle with that too. Like it takes a lot of work to maintain community and to maintain friendships because oftentimes both of the people in the relationship will be going through their own things and it can be very easy to kind of go solo and focus on yourself. And so I would love for this to be a model for young people on how to show up for your friends when you don't feel like showing up because there's literally so many things happening in the world every single day. And there are so many things happening to young people in their own personal lives every single day, right? That can affect their emotions and their attitudes. And so I think it's really important to teach them how to maintain the friendships that will get them through the bad times. A lot of the media that young people consume tends to be very dramatic and it's like we have a fight and it's over or like this is going in my life and I don't have time for you and you're like stupid stuff, it's very like that. And so I've always tried to model in my books how young people can talk to each other in kind of non-dramatic ways and like work through arguments and get over hurdles. But I really dive into it more deeply in this book because both boys, Gustavo has his anxiety. Cordell is kind of going through a depressive episode most of the book. And so they both have these like really heavy things on their minds that kind of get in the way of supporting each other at different points in the book. But I really tried to show how it's okay if you drop the ball one time, you can still pick it up again and try it all over again the next day. So yeah, I really hope that, all the mental health things aside and all the cool dreaming things aside, that they really take with them the message of, friendship is worth it, even when you don't feel like it. And even when it feels really hard and that effort is going to benefit you in the long run.
Yeah. All right, Kate, your turn.
So I wrote the first draft of this book back, I want to say it was either 2017 or 2018. And something wasn't clicking. There was it wasn't dug in enough. I had finished the draft and it felt topical. It had the family, the magic, the whimsy, all these things, but it was just missing something big. And I set it aside and wrote, other books and, came back to it after I talk about this in my acknowledgments. I had this, conversation with my brother while we were on a walk in the woods about forgiveness. And it's something that he thinks a lot about. It was just one of those very impactful conversations. And somehow the way that sort of magically, as we discussed, some things can feel like magic, it wove itself back into this idea that I had set aside. And I will say that it is absolutely the heart of the book. And it's almost wild to think that the book ever existed in any form without it, because it's so central to everything that the book is about. And it's about self-forgiveness. It's about forgiving those that you love. It's about forgiving those that you don't love, about those that have wronged you, and about how holding on to some elements of this anger or hurt or pain can just turn into a yoke that you wear around your own shoulders. And this is a lesson that I am perpetually learning through my life. And I think it is one of the most important lessons of my life in terms of how to be a person in the world, how to be a person in society and in family and relationships. And just with kids at this seeking age, this truth seeking age, wanting to start that conversation early, I would say, just is sort of the main hope that I would have, other than having, fun with the magic, fun with the family, that this idea of forgiveness as this really healing thing would be something that would really stick and resonate.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have a little bit of time for an audience question, which is the hardest kind of question. It's about a book that you remember. So I'm going to ask it. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about it because sometimes it's hard to like bring those books up to mind in the spur of the moment. But the question is, does anybody have a favorite coming of age book that they read when they were coming of age?
When they were or weren't?
Yeah, when you were coming of age, a coming of age book that you read that really resonated with you. So take a second to think about it.
I have an answer right away.
Me too.
For me, I would say Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson. That book was just, I have reread it since. I found it so powerful. I want to say I read it as a teenager. And I would say it was like one of those foundational books for me in the sense of, I think there's typically a thread of healing or I try to include a thread of healing in the books that I write. And I can trace a lot of it back to the experience of going through it with that character and watching this, talk about, these big emotions that you have and these things you go through, and to sort of see this healing journey. And I remember it just really affected me reading it then. And it still I think I read it again like 5 or 6 years ago, but that would be my answer.
All right, Chrystal, did you say that you had one?
Oh, I have one.
Oh, no.
But you can go first, Chrystal. It doesn't matter.
Andrea, you go first, please.
Mine would be My Side of the Mountain. Because I spent a lot of my childhood wanting to run away because I did not feel understood. And even though I had nowhere to run to in Puerto Rico that was anything like that book, because I couldn't run away into the rainforest, it would not have worked. But something about that book, reading about someone my age who was like, you know what, I'm done with these people and I'm just going to go into the woods and I'm powerful and I'm strong enough to like find my own way, make my own house, find my own food, obviously get the coolest pet bird who just loves me and will like hang around with me. That made me feel like it was an option that I could always lean back on, even when it wasn't. But it really impacted me because I feel like that was kind of my intro into the child survival book genre. I then started reading a lot of those books, and they just made me feel really capable. Because no matter how sad I felt, I was like, I can always run away to the wilderness. And yeah, it became kind of like a helper crutch when I was feeling low, were these books where kids didn't need anybody else and they were just fine.
Excellent. All right, now it's your turn, Chrystal.
Now I'll go. I read a lot of like escape fun book series when I was young. I will say the one that I felt like I saw myself in the first time was Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. And it wasn't so, one, because the character was a young Black girl, but also because of the community and the family and like the perseverance. And so in all of my books, there's a theme of community. I think often in middle grade we see these characters kind of off by themselves, conquering the world. And I think that that's a lot of the basis of middle grade and putting your characters out there. But I always find power in the community, in the family, in the people around the main character. And I think to Kay's point about that foundational thing, I always come back to community in my books. And I think that's probably maybe where I first saw it, and I saw the power in having family and people around you to kind of push you through those tough times. And so I would say that one. Kate Speak is an amazing book for me. I didn't read it until I was an adult. I read it again before I drafted Listen to the Girls. And so yeah, that's one of my favorites too. I found it late in life though.
I don't know. I mean, like everybody's always coming of age, right? It's not
Yeah,
just when you're 10. You're still coming of age when you're 40. I think that that's a
absolutely.
good thing to remember. Um, okay. I think that's probably a good place to end it. Thank you all so much for your generous answers today and for giving us such wonderful insight into all of your books. Thank you so much to Andrea, Chrystal, and Kate. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording and certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. You can also find out about the latest webinars on our social channels. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. A huge thank you to our panelists and to our sponsor, Random House Children's Books. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.